Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another Prepping for Gamers. Today, we're going to be talking about fire and all its glory, whether you're using it to stay warm and not freeze to death, or whether you're using it to roast marshmallows at a campsite or something like that. We're going to talk about some of the do's and don'ts. My good friend Grim will be here shortly, and we will get into it. For those of you who, actually do prep, you probably know all of this information already, but there's in the gaming community, we've noticed that not everybody is, up to speed when it comes to fire. Did I bring an actual Bic lighter with me? No, yes, I did. Okay, right off the bat, folks, if you don't have like half a dozen of these in your home or in your bug out bag, etc., this is hands down the simplest, easiest way for anybody to get started with your prepping and your survival kits, your emergency kits. Just a good old fashioned Bic lighter. Don't waste your money and your time with those cheap dollar store knockoff lighters. Those clear lighters. Any of those. If you've got some, don't toss them because you can still use them to start a fire. But one of these in a non-windy situation will last you a good long time. There he is, the man of the hour. Grim, come on down. You're the next contestant. I was just telling the folks at home about good old-fashioned Bic lighters. Your number one easiest, simplest solution. However,
absolutely.
And don't waste your money or your time with the cheap, crappy dollar store lighters or those clear lighters. Most of those literally aren't as tough as these. You can literally drop. I've seen people drop those clear plastic lighters and crack them, and because it's under pressure, not likely that it's going to explode, but it will empty itself because of the pressure in a hot tick. And these, I've seen people use these to open up beer bottles. Use them as a hammer in an emergency. I don't recommend that, but
Bic is well made.
Old-fashioned. Yeah. And they're less than $1, and trust me, they will last or outlast an entire package of those clear lighters. You take 4 of those clear lighters, they're gonna not only are they gonna stop working because the wheel mechanism is crap, but the overall life expectancy of one of these. And there's some ways that you can make these last a little bit longer, by making sure you're not constantly trying to light it in a windy situation. That wind is your number one, if not number 2 enemy when it comes to making fire. The other one, of course, is obviously water. But water, you can dry that out. But if it's windy, there's not a whole lot you can do. And Grim just left. Okay, I guess I'm all on my lonesome here. He'll be back in just a second. He probably did a boomer thing and hit the wrong button there, right?
Sorry, yeah. I did a boomer thing. That's right.
That's exactly what I just said.
You're right. I did a boomer thing. Yep, the Bic lighters, so you're right about those. You're right about Bic.
And there's lots of other things. Graham brought some things to show off to make fires if you don't have one of these. And even if you do, you should really learn what Grim's about to show you here with I believe you've got a ferro rod and something else.
Yep. Got a ferro rod and a knife. And here it is. Hope you can see it okay. This is a good way, just a very simple way to start. Usually it's better to use the back of the blade. And this will work in any kind of weather. This is a great thing. I would recommend a decent knife with it. If you put it with a knife, it's always better to have a knife than just a flat rod or something to use, because if you're familiar with most role play games, this is basically very similar to your flint and steel, or your it's very similar to that. I hope everybody can see that okay.
It's funny in the old days, Gygax and Arneson were so on the money with it. They actually just called it a tinderbox which,
Yep.
you know, is a little deceptive because a a good tinderbox will have three things in it. It will have flint, it will have steel, and it will have tinder. And what is
Yep.
tinder, you may be asking yourself? That's all kinds of different things. There's a lot of different ways you can make tinder, but believe it or not, in your homes right now, folks, you probably have something that you are about to throw away that makes some of the best tinder or kindling, whatever you want to call it. You guys know what I'm talking about? Grim, what do you think? What do you think I'm referencing?
Oh, well, you got, I use a cotton padding that I've made out of, it's got cotton, it's got, a little bit of, wax, a special wax I use,
Mhm.
and that makes it pretty good. It'll stay longer, and I get the sparks in there, and it'll catch up good. You can also use, oh my gosh, you can use a lot of things. Remember though, if you're trying to use wool or a natural fiber, don't bother with that. True wool doesn't burn, believe it or not. So if you're running a role
Right,
play
but you know
game
what?
and
You know
somebody
what
gets
does
in,
burn?
uh, what's that?
Dryer lint. Dryer lint.
Oh
I
yeah,
hear.
dry wool's
It,
excellent
is,
thing.
is instead of throwing it out, I mean, obviously at some point you're going to have to throw some of it out, but the next time you empty your dryer, clean out the dryer lint compartment, just bring yourself a little Ziploc bag and just put it all in there. I mean, get yourself a nice, sandwich bag or bigger, just full of it. And then later on you can put it into smaller bags because that stuff, from what I've seen, will catch fire incredibly fast, which is why you also want to clean out your damn dryer lint compartment, because if you're not careful, you're talking, most people have a gas powered dryer, gas and flammable material. You're just asking for an issue if you don't clean that thing out regularly. And you might as well put it into your bug out bag, your emergency earthquake kit, stuff like that, because uh, it will do the trick. And I've also heard that you can also use dryer lint as like in first aid, uh, uh, like sopping up blood, basically as an improvised bandage or compress or something like that, because it will absorb the blood like a sponge, and it's relatively clean from having been heated up in the dryer. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I wish Bo was here to school me on that one, but yeah.
The nice thing about dryer lint too is generally you have a lot of different particles in there. I don't use it mostly because we don't have a dryer that we use regularly. We use clothesline, but it does
Even
have
in the
a
winter.
lot of nice stuff. Hi.
What's happening, James? How you doing, man? I was just
Hi.
talking about you just a little while ago. Nothing bad. Nothing bad. But yeah, now a couple of things, that you guys, probably have heard before. But since we're talking about, staying warm and cooking, do your cooking outside if you're using fire, unless you actually have a chimney and a fireplace that's clean. Just go ahead and do it outdoors. A couple of reasons. You're probably going to want to use your barbecue to cook. That's fine. But you may want to shorten those legs and get it down as close to the ground as possible. Because if you're trying to cook through your chimney fireplace, that's going to actually take that smoke and basically send off a signal to everybody in the neighborhood that you've got firewood and you've got food and you're cooking, and they might not.
Yep. Very true.
Because the chimney acts as a directional device that forces the smoke up higher, and people will be able to see that a lot farther off. If you've got your barbecue down low, by taking off the legs or cutting the legs short so that it's down, that you have to get down on your hands and knees to cook, or better yet, disassemble the legs, dig a hole in the backyard, put the whole grill in the hole, because that way the smoke will dissipate quicker and faster kind of like a, what is it? Is it a Cherokee stove? The hole that's dig in the ground.
Yep.
I may have the Indian name wrong, but
Well, a Cherokee stove that I have is well, my dad called it a Cherokee stove. It's basically a little. He also called it a hobo stove, but it's just a can. But yeah, that's also something you could put in your fireplace, which is a great idea. You could put that in there, and it's not a real big fire. It's not a roaring fire. That's a very good idea. Never thought of that
and
one.
there are a couple of propane, which is if you can do that, that's cool. But you may want to actually save the propane until you're using it to heat, because unless you're stocking up firewood for the winter, all spring and summer long, that may be a life-saving device, especially if somebody gets sick, then you need to keep them warm. But there are a couple of stoves. There's a Patriot stove out there. It's also like a little, about the size of a half-gallon paint can, that just uses a couple of twigs and some leaves and gets super freaking hot because of the way it funnels the air and stuff, that you can cook on, just scraps you find on the ground, instead of needing to break out a saw or an axe. Those are really good to cook your food, and cook it quick, fast, and with very little actual smoke and material that you're going to consume, whether it be twigs or branches or things like that. And we're just getting out of the tail end of winter, but I'm already making plans for firewood and kindling and things like that. I've got 2 racks to dry my firewood or to store my firewood, and I've got don't ask me how, but I got you know how you get those big trash cans from the state or the city. Well, I've got 2 extras left over from the previous landowners here, and so now I use those for just the twigs and kindling. The only thing I toss out right now are leaves and pine needles and things like that, and lawn clippings. Everything else, I don't care how tiny a twig it is, I'm still putting it in there, and I'll break them down until they're tiny, because that way they take up less space. And those 2 bins are they're almost 5 feet tall, 4 feet tall, whatever, the big trash cans, but they're chock full of.
You did a great job with that. I thought that was very impressive. I bet there's nobody in your neighborhoods there that's using an actual fireplace, are they, in the winter?
There's one person that does in my cul-de-sac of about 15 houses.
Exactly.
But there's that's it. Everybody else was probably looking at skyrocketing gas bills for this last year. And I was lucky I got that firewood for free, but next year I'm going to have to pay actually pay for my firewood, because I'm just about out. And don't make the mistake, if you're going to buy firewood, unless it's an emergency, don't buy it from the grocery store. And if you're going to have like a cord or more delivered, order it in the summertime or the spring. Get the number for your local firewood delivery guy, and call in from time to time. Note the price in summer versus spring and fall, because right now it's like $350 a cord, and that's 8 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet of, and I'm not going to say solid fire. There's gaps in between that, so it's not as it's not perfectly a big chunk of 4 by 4 by 8, but it's $350 or $400 for hardwood, and it's $350 for a mix of hardwood. And for the $50, darn well that it's going to be more than 50% mix as opposed to hardwood. Unless the difference, you're better off just spending the extra $50, unless you're trying to get 2 cords, and that extra $100 makes it can make a big difference in how much firewood you get. But I know for a fact that my family could have gone through 4 cords of firewood this last winter and fall without batting an eye. But you got to really, condition yourself. Like right now, you guys have seen me wear this sweater and my vest, and this is an all day thing. From the time I wake up till bedtime, wearing a sweater or a jacket, inside the house. One, to keep the gas bill down, and two, to stay warm, because it's just, you're going to have to get used to that if things get bad. You're not going to have the same luxuries. You're not going to be able to take those hour-long showers like my son, but and also don't be taking your showers, at 8, 9 o'clock at night, because it not only is it going to be colder, out of the shower when you first get out, but you're going to use up more gas or whatever it is to get the water hot, provided you actually have a way to get hot water. So your best bet is to, switch up your schedule and do it in the middle of the day when it's as warm as possible. There's some really good solar powered water heater gadgets out there you can get of various sizes. Basically, they just paint them black and do a few other things that just attracts the heat like crazy. And it may not be steaming hot like you like, but you can always boil some water and mix it in with regular water, because that's how they used to do it in the Old West. They bring up hot buckets of water and add it, until it was tolerable, or better, depending on the situation. But there's a lot of things you're going to have to do, or at least think about doing, to stay warm. One of the best things I've seen out there, one of the best, cheapest gadgets I've seen, is the I forget what it's called. It's those silver Mylar emergency blankets, but instead of it being a blanket, it's actually a poncho, and they're still like $2 or $3. And if you can keep it, from getting ruined, ripped and torn, which I would recommend getting some good old fashioned packing tape and taping the hell out of the outside of it, because you don't care about, what it looks like on the outside. It's that silver on the inside reflecting your body heat back in you. And if you were to take a roll, do I have it here? Take a roll of this stuff and just, do it up. Just do it up before you put it on, instead of after you've put it on and ripped it, and it'll make it 10 times stronger, if not 100 times stronger, because this packing tape is pretty strong stuff. It will withstand a lot of impact and pokes and things like that. And, fashion has got to go out the window when it comes to, survival and being able to, conserve that body heat. When I saw the ponchos, I'm like, that is, one of the single best survival gadgets out there I've seen in a good long time. And mind you, I look at all of the survival gadgets on a regular basis to, keep abreast of, what new technologies out there, what new items are out there. And, they can still be used as a signaling device if you need to, and, getting the regular blankets, the emergency blankets to, build shelters and things like that. Not a bad idea.
Another thing I have, it's kind of off the subject a little bit, but you just brought it to my mind, is I do a lot of Civil War reenacting. Well, when I was alive, I did. I do very little.
When you were alive?
I show it now. When I do. Yeah,
you said when you're alive?
When I was alive, yeah. When I wasn't as sick as I am. But anyways, yeah, I do it for Living Histories now. I'll show people. But what it is called a gum blanket poncho, and that's a great thing. And what it is the one I have is modern. It's more modern, but it's just a rubberized coating on a piece of canvas, and it has a slit in the middle, and you can use it as a ground cloth when you're camping. And also that doubles up as a poncho with the slit. You just put it over yourself. It's a great little old school invention. Nice to have, but it keeps you warm. and but it's not really nothing to do with the subject of fire starting, but it's a nice thing.
Well, fire starting in itself is a multitude of issues. You're gonna need your fire for keeping warm, for cooking food, for sterilizing water, for sterilizing surgical implements or things like that. Should you need them for signaling, if for some reason you need to signal for help or something like that. Not like any of us is going to be stranded on a desert island, but if they're making food drops or something like that, then letting them know where to do so. They'll also keep away certain critters, from bugs to wolves and coyotes, and not to mention lighting. I highly recommend that in these kind of situations you get used to waking up with the sun and going to bed when the sun goes down. That's the way they did it in the old days, and they did it for a reason, because it just made more sense. You're only going to be awake, the average adult, 16 hours a day, and if all 16 of those hours are during daylight, you're still going to get your 8 hours of sleep. You'll get more productivity, and the luxury of watching TV and reading a book by firelight or something like that. You're going to have to get your homestead in good working order before you can indulge in those activities, let alone having the electricity to sit around and watch TV or movies or play video games or whatever. Your electricity is going to be needed for far more important things, like keeping your refrigerator running, and having electricity for your radios, because that's where you're going to get your really actually important news. And I don't mean from the local favorite news channel. You're going to want to get it off the radio, because that's going to be the real deal, what's really going on. If there's any TV out there, they're going to be hitting you with the bullshit, propaganda, stay at home, etc. But if you want to know real information, the radios are going to be crucial. But for the most part, your electricity really should be going to your refrigerator or refrigerators or freezers. Everything else is got to go out the window until a later time, because
there's another interesting thing I wanted to bring up, Shadow, why we're doing, kind of why I wanted to do these, and this is something you got me thinking about with this idea of doing this for gamers. Did you know that the United States has de-evolved when it comes to the protection of its citizens? We used to have what's called the Civil Defense Group, and the Civil Defense Group was an awesome entity. It was very advanced. People have no idea how advanced. They think it's just guys, and you see the movies with the guys with the CD helmets on yelling. No, they were a very, very advanced. They had medical. They had units for electric. They had units for basically preparing shelters. If you see a fallout shelter, and I know this from working in Virginia with our with the military here, when I was in it, I was told to do an evaluation of civil defense shelters. There are none. There are none. I went into shelters with 50, 60-year-old crackers and water barrels that were rusted out. It was horrible. You do not have in your area, wherever you are, unless you're blessed somehow and have really thoughtful people that continue to do it, you don't have good shelters anymore. You don't have people that are going to help you. You have the military, who's going to probably put you in a school gymnasium, like the National Guard, which I was a part of for a while. The National Guard, the reserves, whatever, the Army, whoever it is, what they have for you is putting you in some large facility and giving you whatever they can to eat and a cot if you're lucky. And that's what you have. I mean, it's not their fault. We have let civil defense, for some reason, we think that we're safer from nuclear war now. We have a man who's in Russia right now saying, well, you're supplying arms to the Ukraine, so you keep doing this, and he's dying. He's not stable. And he talks about a lot, way too much for my comfort. You know, he has 7,000 plus nukes, and if you believe he has 6,000 or, you know, whatever they agreed to, you're wrong. The Soviets, and they're still
Yeah.
basically the Soviets, have always lied about how many nuclear weapons they have pointed at us. And we
And yeah,
foolishly
you
took
can't
out
really
our
blame them for that, because they know we're lying and we know they're lying,
Yeah,
so yeah. Wouldn't
well,
you? I mean,
yeah, well, they're particularly bad. I mean, we foolishly took out under the Obama administration. We took out, made sure that we kept out our best deterrent, which was our Peacekeeper, the MX missile, 10 independently targeted reentry vehicles. We have crappy Minutemen that they cannot hardly keep going. They have
Yep.
to scavenge parts to keep these things going. He knows that. That's not a deterrent. And we do have, thank God, our SLBMs. But Joe Biden has stopped our sea launch ballistic missile program. And believe me, that was what was keeping us safe from Russia. If you want to call them Russia now, that's fine. And China. We have extremely good missile submarines. But Biden has stopped, and I heard this, I could not believe it, stopped the development and cut back money to this program. We're in danger. And Putin knows, the Russians are very good at knowing what we have nuclear wise, where it is. And I think, be prepared, because you don't know what could happen. You think we're so far away from nuclear war, and that's what I was getting at, was the Civil Defense Fund. After the Soviet Union fell, supposedly, and it did, a lot of it did, but we said, well, we don't really need a civil defense fund and a civil defense entity, so it fell apart. So you, as an American citizen, have been let down by your government. All the Republicans, all the Democrats have let you down because they've taken away an entity that could protect you, not just in nuclear holocaust, but in other things. And we don't have that information, where to go in an attack. We don't have any good, FEMA is not a replacement for the Civil Defense Fund. So I just wanted to tell everybody that. So be prepared. It can't hurt.
yeah.
If you're
Prepared, it's like the adage, it's like the old adage, better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. All this stuff could always be repurposed for other things. If for some reason we enter a new golden age tomorrow, all your prepping supplies are, unnecessary. So that take them to the food banks, take them to the homeless shelters, things like that later on. But in the meantime, till that golden age comes back, stock up, gear up, train up, and stay positive. But not so positive that you give up on prepping for an emergency, because I've got a couple of fire extinguishers. I've never had to use them, but you know what? I'd never cut loose with them. I'd never give them away or throw them away.
That's a great idea. If you have an old fire extinguisher, Shadow, a lot of people, my friend who he's also a gamer. He worked in a place called Extinguisher Sales and Service. He taught me a little neat trick. And I'm going to just tell people this because I remembered it while I was out working. I'm like, yeah, I got to tell that before I forget. Get a rubber mallet. And if you have an old fire extinguisher, take it, flip it over on the bottom, and hit it a few times with that rubber mallet. The powder inside gets stuck.
Oh, no. It's not those kind. It's not those kind. It's not those kind.
I'm saying that if you have an older one, those are great for.
No, the kind we have are the big ones that you'd see, strapped to a wall somewhere, and you open them up and you fill them with water, and then you hook it up to a tire pump and you pressurize it yourself with a tire pump. Those
are great. Those are really great. Yeah.
Have you seen those spray cans of foam for putting out fires?
Yeah, those are awesome, and they're small. Some of them too. Amazing.
Yeah, they're like the size of a can of hairspray, or Pam for cooking spray, and I need to get like 4 of those, and just have them on hand, in the kitchen because grandma's coming back,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
she started more fires in my kitchen than anybody else in the history of this house.
It
But
means she loves you. It means she loves you, Shadow.
she
Don't
doesn't
don't
cook
think
for me ever.
she knows you
Yeah,
like no, but she knows you like to stay warm.
but
You
yeah,
like to stay warm.
yeah, I do, but I also don't want to be so warm that my house is on fire.
Well,
But
that's a good
yeah, if
point.
you can pick up some of those, because just as important as fire is, that 1 in 100 chance that the fire is going to go awry, and
Absolutely.
don't ever, as a fire engine drives by my house,
Yeah, there you
don't
go.
don't use gasoline to start a fire, and if
That's
you're gonna, remember that a little goes a long way.
absolutely. Yeah.
you know, uh, you know, less than an ounce of gasoline will go. Prepping part 5 fires. God bless Grandma. Thanks, Mac. Yeah. I like this right here. Stock up and train very wise. If you never need them, then you have camping supplies for a good while. Yeah, absolutely. And
Absolutely.
we've literally pitched the tents in the backyard just to simulate that experience, during the summertime, because it's actually, it gets pretty hot here. It can get up to 115 without, even trying hard to,
Wow.
get warm here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we've pitched the tents in the backyard, and, you know, blown up the air mattresses and all that, goofy stuff, as opposed to, traveling, 100 miles or more to get to a campsite to pay somebody for the same, pleasure or luxury or however you want to look at it. Sure, it's nice to see that stuff, but I'd rather go home and sleep in my own bed. Thank you. That's why I won't be going to any FEMA camps whatsoever. Um, Even at gunpoint, I'll just point mine right at them. It's like, you know, not going to happen. Just not going to happen. Those camps, we'll go into that later, but you cannot even imagine what will happen to your home if you are gone for a month or longer. It'll be empty of everything, and what will be left will be an absolute disastrous mess. Everything you own and care about will be gone. It'll be an empty
Yep.
building with broken windows and God knows what else, human waste all over the place, because people, who said no, will be going from home to home and using up and taking whatever you had and doing whatever they wanted with it. All your books, that'll be in a fireplace somewhere in ashes. All your clothing
Absolutely.
will have been shredded, destroyed, stolen, whatever.
You're better off to shelter at home if you can. Now, when you're
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
I got a question for you. We haven't really broached, breached. Sorry, I'm a little tired today and I haven't been feeling well. But Shadow, I want to ask you this: of our viewers, what would you say to these folks? I thought about this. We talk about fire. If our viewers are in, say, we don't know where they all are, but what if they're in a high-rise apartment? What would you recommend to them?
As for fire and cooking,
Or for anything, if you're in a high rise, you're probably in a city. What would you recommend that they do if they can? Or I'm sure a lot of people have had that question. Or at least people, if they are in that situation, they might wonder. I got people above me, below me,
if you're in
beside
that
me.
situation, find out who's going and who's staying first, right
That's a
off the
good
bat.
idea. Yeah, good idea.
Organize, and resist, because they're not going to send an army to get you out of there. They're going to send
Right,
10 guys tops, and they're
right,
not going to risk their lives for it. If you show a force of defense that you're not leaving, they're not going to start shooting Americans to what?
right.
If you don't go under the threat of, being a weapon pointed at you, because you're pointing one right back, they're just going to be like, okay, fine, you're on your own.
Yeah, most
And
National Guard would probably just say, "Oh, I don't care," and they go to the next building.
yep,
They'd be like,
absolutely. They're
that's the
not
way
going
they
to
should
start a
do.
war or an armed
Right,
conflict to get you out of there. They're going to tell
Right.
you that it's going to be dangerous because they'll use the old gas leaks and things like that and sanitation. You tell them, don't care, don't care.
Yep.
Get out, get
Yep.
out, get out of my line of sight because in 5 seconds I'm going to start shooting. So you can get hold hands with Dan, get back in your truck and piss off. Because they're
Hopefully they'll just move on to the next
no,
building.
they will. I mean,
But
they
what about
because
the
if they shoot you, then they've got more work, not only paperwork, but they got to then remove your body. If you're not going to
Yep.
willingly get in the vehicle, they're just
Yep.
going to pretend like they never saw you. You know?
Well, you got a good idea about, when people are in a building like that, is get your neighbors, find out who's going to be a viable person, who's going to stay around. A lot of people will try to leave in a big city. And like I've said, even if you have alternate routes and maps and paper maps and everything, you may have a lot of trouble getting out of that big city. And if it's not that a nuke is a 25 megaton nuke is heading for your city or something, it's some other kind of problem.
Yeah,
You might just be better off to stay there and like
right. And it really literally depends on the situation. If it's like, the situation we had recently, the last thing you want to do is be in an auditorium or a camp surrounded by people. You're better off closing your own doors, staying on your own property, and telling them to pound sand. Okay. If it's a fire, obviously you have to get out. If it's a flood, you probably have to get out. If it's an earthquake, you definitely have to get out because then the risk of a gas leak or a water leak or things like that are actually a big danger.
Very true. Very true.
If it's a tornado, well then, you live in an area that has basements and cellars and you go there. And then you find out what you do next.
What would you tell people that live on that high rise and they have they don't think they have a good viable way to start a fire to cook with or to keep warm? They don't have a fireplace or anything like it in their place. What would you recommend to them as far as fire issues?
Well, you get yourself your biggest metal coffee can and you go to the roof. Because if you try doing that, if you do that stuff in an apartment, you can do it downstairs. You don't want to do it inside because then you will, kill yourself from the fumes and the smoke, etc. Go into the carport if you can, and cook down there and eat down there and then get back to your home. Get used to eating cold food. Most canned foods, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure all canned foods have actually been cooked. So you don't have to worry about that. If you got, raw meat, that's different. Then you need to cook it. But, wasting your time and resources to cook up a can of SpaghettiOs, dumb idea. Just get used to eating it cold. Tea candles, clay pot bricks. I've got those, Mac. Those work. I was going to bring that up for heating. The clay pot trick with tea lights. It works if you hunker down into a small room and everybody sleeps in the small room. If you've got vaulted ceilings like I do, it's not going to do a damn bit of good. Find one room that you can curtain off and keep the heat from escaping. And everybody, sleeps in the same room, as many people to a bed as you can tolerate, more body heat, bring your pets with you, the whole bit. And then when the sun comes up, suck it up and deal with the cold weather. If you've got elderly people and sick people, obviously they're going to be staying in bed all day until they get better. I actually found out about that a couple of years ago. And it's amazing how, if you do it right and you go check out the videos, clay pot or tea light heaters on YouTube. I've watched half a dozen or more of those videos. I even made one to send to my aunt who lives in another state and it gets cold there and she lives by herself in an apartment. And I'm like, get these simple items and follow the thing, and it'll keep you warm. If you don't have a heater or a fireplace or something like that,
And if you have an older, I
call it
just
brick
want
or kiln heater. Okay, I'll try to remember that, Mac, because I just called it by what you actually use. The ingredients. You need a metal pan, a clay pot, and a couple of tea lights, and I think you need like something like a silver dollar or a quarter to cover up the hole in the tea light. The pan is actually what I use is a cupcake pan, because you can put the tea lights in each one of the little cupcake receptacles, then put the clay pot on top of it. The
that's a good
candles are
idea.
lit,
Yep,
and it just heats it up, and
it's a great idea.
it wasn't mine, but it worked.
That's a great idea. If you have an old person too, and you're kind of taking care of them, or an older person, make sure if that you are in a place where you can't heat it very well, keep their socks on their feet. That's going to be one of the first places they could really get trouble, and you don't want them to be waking up and not being able to get up and properly move around if you needed them to. So keep those socks on. That's a great thing. That's one of the
Yeah.
places where a lot of people don't realize this, but when you're laying down, it's not just your head where a lot of heat escapes, it's your feet. And that's why they don't do as well as your head to stay warm. They get colder, and that's why part of the reason our feet get colder. Of course, you could have issues health wise, like I do. My feet get cold anyways, but
Okay, real quick, what is a Carhartt?
I don't know.
Mac,
It's good to have
Mac,
something in your
can you elaborate on that? Yeah, I've heard various things on the head where supposedly you don't actually lose as much heat from your head as people think. But you know what? I'm not going to sleep with a night hat on or my watch cap on at night, because then I just end up getting a headache. But during the early hours of the day and stuff like that, heck yeah. But keeping active is actually one of the better ways to keep warm that people forget. It's a suit of
Absolutely.
warm coats and bibs. Okay, okay. Thanks, Mac. Yeah, thermals. If you don't have them, get them. You know, all just layers. The more layers, the more it keeps the heat of your body in. Stay active. Unfortunately, with okay, like for blacksmithing and things like that, Mac, or for like barbecuing or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about there. Um, but if you're going to be active, then that means more calories, and therefore, if you're gonna polo gear, okay, okay. If you're gonna need to be active, then you might as well be active looking for food. There's a whole lot of things probably in your backyard and in your neighborhood you can eat. In a life or death situation. It blew me away when I saw the actual environment that the Donner Party went through. They were surrounded by food. They just didn't know it. All day long, every day, they were surrounded by food. They didn't need to go through what they went through if they would have known a couple of simple tricks, which we'll go into when we do our food episode. But if you're need to stay warm during the day, keeping active, actually looking for food, not stressing over food, not sitting around thinking about food, but going out and doing something to find it. One, it'll get you to start maybe shedding some extra pounds. And when you shed some extra pounds, then you'll find out you don't actually need to eat as much, because those old appetites and requirements for moving around a heavier body start to lessen, and you actually can mitigate a lot of the effects of the misery of hunger if you have spent some time getting back into shape and losing weight, and understanding that lunch is a luxury most people indulge in far too often. Breakfast, dinner, that's you're gonna have to get used to that. We don't do lunch here at the Shadow household. We've skipped that for more than 5 years. We just don't do lunch. If worst comes to worst, we'll have an early dinner, and that's it. Be sure not to overexert. Yeah, conserve your calories. Yeah. But if you need to keep active for whatever reason, especially if you have things like sciatica or you can't sit around because of a back issue or something like that, then walking around your area, patrolling it, looking for those edible things that you can eat, actually hunting for, small game if that's what you're doing, and looking for things that you can, whether it's collecting firewood or, you know, things that people left behind or scavenging or things like that. Better to be, busy than bored when it comes
Very
to
true.
an emergency situation. It will do wonders for your psyche and your overall well-being because you will be doing something about it. Do not let your family just sit around and mope. Make sure they're all included in all those activities. And if you get to a point where you can do like we said a while ago and break out a role-playing game, and play some D&D or play some Call of Cthulhu as the sun's going down and you don't need the light, you know, and there's all kinds of ways, interesting ways that you can come up with random number generators. We used to do the pick a number, between X and X. Our DM would say pick a number between 1 and 10. Okay, 5. Okay, pick another number between 1 and something. Well, guess what? You just rolled a D20 and you don't even know it, right?
Exactly.
Remember how we used to roll a D6 and a D10 to get a
Yep.
D20?
Yeah.
They don't know what
Yeah.
they're rolling for or picking numbers for, and maybe later on they'll figure it out and start going, well, I picked 10 and 10. Oh, that's a crit. No, actually, you just rolled, whatever. You know what I mean? You can mix it up and mess with them, but you don't need your light to play a good role playing game. Maybe a little bit to write stuff down, but trust me, when your sole entertainment at night is role playing, you're going to wake up and you're going to remember exactly all 33 of those gold pieces you found. You can write it down later. If you don't remember it, someone else will. You don't really need to be writing all that crap down, and you'll learn your character sheet. Your family and friends, whoever role playing with you, late at night, they'll remember that stuff for you,
Very true.
and it'll give you stuff to, I know when I was younger, I would be thinking about my game during class because I knew I was going to play that afternoon or that weekend. I'd be mulling around in my head on the walk to school, stuff like that. I can literally, memorize my character just by thinking about it in my head, while doing other things. If you guys aren't singing or playing I Spy or something like that while you're doing a hike for firewood or, like I said, edibles or something like that. Berries and nuts and barks and things that you can eat and weeds.
Get your family involved and being prepared too. I'm blessed that my wife and my son, they're both prepared oriented folks who, and I know you have the similar situation there, Shadow, but get your family prepared, get your family ready, try, your whoever's involved in your life, like you live with your brother, get him involved. If you live with a roommate, get them involved. Tell them, I'm doing this for a reason. It's to help protect our friendship or our family unit, whatever it is. You want to be protected because that's just good to be prepared.
Right. And definitely, we're going to be doing an episode coming up shortly about, your neighborhood, your circle of people you trust, your family, your friends, whatever that circle is, because you're not going to be able to do all the things by yourself. If you're a dad and and you've got a wife or a girlfriend and a kid or 2.5 kids and a dog or whatever, they're all going to be looking for you to be doing all this stuff, and you can't do it by yourself. You can't do it all. between, doing patrol and night watch duty that you may very well have to do to, keep the bad guys away or to keep the coyotes away or whatever, and then on top of, putting in 8 hours of cooking or chopping wood or building or foraging or hunting, and then 8 hours of sleep. Because if you don't get those 8 hours of sleep, you're gonna run into the death spiral of exhaustion. So you've got to have, a steady routine. Well, that routine is going to require getting other people to, pull their own weight, do the things that you can't do or that you're not great at. Someone's got to cook, someone's got to clean, someone's got to do the, the other things that, depending on the situation you may need to do, whether it's, stocking up or chopping firewood or, all the other things, that, we usually forget about because we don't have to do them by hand anymore. You're going to definitely want to, get that circle of friends and family and people you trust, people that aren't going to just get on the cattle cars and get shipped off to wherever they're told to go. Because chances are you might never see some of those people again that go to the camps and go get on the cattle cars and things like that. Especially if it's a nationwide disaster as opposed to just a statewide. When it's just your state, it's going to be a little bit more likely that you will be coming home eventually. But when it's a nationwide disaster, you're better off on your own because it's only a matter of time before that nationwide disaster either goes back to normal or it completely collapses in on itself. Because like Grim was saying, our government is not prepared for any kind of disaster whatsoever, whether it be a state or nationwide. They have dropped the ball every single time. Now, I'm not blaming the people that are doing the hard work and the heavy lifting. Those guys are doing what they're supposed to do. The nurses, the workers,
Exactly.
all that.
Yep.
But the people in charge all the way at the top, all the way down till right before the ground level, those people are siphoning off half the money and the resources for their own, selfish needs, and the crap that's going to be sent down to the very bottom.
Yeah.
Is the juice is just not worth the squeeze.
Shadow, hold on there, buddy. You can't say we don't need more gender studies. I'm not gonna. We need to know who's who. I mean, I gotta know if that guy over there's a plant or a tree or a dog. How am I gonna know? He looks like a guy. He looks like a male man. He just looks. He's a guy. But how am I gonna know if we don't have more gender studies?
Well, there is some good news on that horizon. Unfortunately, with the awful tragedy that happened yesterday, that's going to be going to that whole narrative is going to be crumbling a little bit more every day. Hearts go out to those people yesterday, but it's funny how our hearts never go out to the bigger stories like that we don't hear about because of the people involved and the kinds of people involved and the locations. It's amazing how certain cities have worse things than that happen on a regular basis, like clockwork. Literally,
Yeah, they do,
50 people a weekend, and we'll never hear about it. Okay.
Yeah, these things almost seem like they're planned.
Well, that's because they are. Because they literally are. This one's no different. You can argue with me all you want, but when the internet receives the right combination of words, that's reported instantaneously, almost the speed of light, to the people that monitor such situations, and they can cut those off at the pass if they chose to, but they don't because it fits a certain agenda and narrative that they're pushing. Didn't really want to get into that, but I did want to, just say that, that whole thing is starting to crumble. And yesterday wasn't the beginning because we've already seen the pushback and we're going to see more and more. it's, it's unfortunate that we have to, you know, live through these times, but it's also a blessing because we will someday be able to look back on this and go, yeah, this was, my, version of the greatest generation, the depression and all these hard times that made strong men and women, because as the
Did you
adage goes,
did you see
strong.
that?
Did I see what?
Sorry, I was just saying. I don't want to get political here, but when our president, you saw the quotation hand marks, when he came down yesterday and was making all these planned jokes and talking about ice cream and talking about children in the audience and how they looked, that was horrifying to me as an American. I just want to say that was absolutely
It's
disgusting.
not only was it to every American who saw that, but I've been
I couldn't
watching
believe it.
Sky News Australia has done several
Yeah, that's what I knew. Yeah, they're
uh,
good.
opinion pieces on that, and just how absolutely ghoulish, uncaring, and selfish it came across.
It was
Um,
horrifying. I could not believe
the very
that.
first words out of his mouth, should have been something completely different, other than
I
telling
thought they had,
everybody a bunch
I
of
thought
lame ass dad jokes.
I thought ABC News had made him. I really did. I thought ABC News had made a mistake. I'm like, they've got an old clip on there. And I was shocked to see that was not the wrong clip. He was really that jovial and talking about ice cream and making jokes about his wife. It was horrifying.
Absolutely disgusting in every sense of the word.
I don't want to get political.
That's another one of those little chops away at the story, the narrative, the agenda. That's one more piece that's getting nicked away. Kind of like chopping down a tree. You got to hit that tree a bunch of times before it falls down. Well, their story,
No,
their agenda, and their narrative it took another
nobody
big
should have
whack from a mighty big axe.
Nobody should have acted like that. I don't care if he was a Republican, a Democrat, I don't care if it was somebody I liked or didn't like. That was unbelievable and an insult to this country and a horrible insult to those poor people.
Those families will never ever forget it. And thank you very much for bringing over countless more people to a different side than whatever side it was that installed that toilet of a human being.
Yeah.
Every time something like that happens, that doesn't, hell, even the people in the audience laughing should have started throwing shit at him. I mean,
I couldn't believe they were laughing. That's why another reason I thought, that they wouldn't be laughing. That's got to be another. I thought it was I really thought I had the wrong clip and turned it off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the right clip. These people are laughing and they think everybody thinks this is funny. And this whole thing, it's sickening. But I don't want to get
it literally was. Those are the exact words that some other countries have said, Australia being one of them, that said that's exactly the response. This is sickening. He should have came in there solemn, with a heart full of sympathy. I mean,
if he didn't care, he could shut off camera to somebody else. But I mean,
he knew exactly what he was going there to talk about, but yet it took him 5 minutes to get to that because he was too busy, blowing his own horn and bragging about a refrigerator full of ice cream when there is no amount of ice cream in the planet that's going to ease the woes of those poor families. There's no amount of money. I heard that one of the victims left behind a daughter who had no other family.
Oh.
So that little girl's going to grow up in an orphanage somewhere, or maybe get shuttled off to some far away family member.
That is so horrible.
He was like a single father and mother nowhere to be found type of thing. And
You know,
I hope I read that wrong.
Shadow,
But
this does play into what we're talking about. If the head guy up there is going to act like that, and if you think you're safe with that guy in charge, or these people under him are in charge, or a guy stealing women's clothing in an airport is in charge of something, of course he's not anymore, I guess, but if you think these people are a guy who's a transportation secretary and won't go look at the situation, if you think you're safe, if you really think these people are going to keep you safe from the top down, that you better believe there's good people on different levels that will try to help you. But if you think you're safe with the top and a lot of these higher ups that have been chosen, you are wrong. You're wrong. They won't. They'll follow a plan if you're lucky. They're not going to make their own decisions that are good. You're not going to have somebody going, oh, I want to go see this for myself. No, you're going to have them following a plan. And if the plan's wrong, it doesn't matter. They'll stick to it because obviously, obviously something is really, really wrong with them. You don't go into an airport as a man and steal women's clothing. I'm sorry, you don't do that. Even if you are some kind of trans guy, you don't steal somebody else's stuff. It's just common decency.
well, that unfortunately, common decency along with common sense has taken a complete vacation on the situation for
Absolutely.
whatever reason.
And that's why you're in danger. Yeah. That's why the folks out there, that's why I'm in danger, my family, everybody in this country's in danger. We have an open border. Like I say, I didn't mean to make this political. I'm sorry. But
it's okay. It does illustrate the point
coming in by the ton. We used to have I want to say this one, we used to have this joke when I was doing stuff in the military. And we go up to a Soviet guy. Picture the scene. It's a Soviet general, and he's in charge of a 152 millimeter nuclear weapon artillery unit. Okay, they have 6 shells for their 6 cannons. Okay, so the reporter comes up and he says, "Comrade General, how many nuclear weapons do you have there?" And he says, "Well, comrade, I have 6. Let me get this on the camera. I have 6 nuclear weapons. Yes, 6. Oh, yeah, 6. I mean, 6. Oh, well, that's interesting. And what about that nice car you're driving and that fur coat your girlfriend's wearing? No more questions, comrade. This is outrageous." That joke means that there are lots of 152 millimeter nuclear suitcase size, well, trunk size weapons out there that have been sold to our enemies, been sold to extremist groups, and they're not accounted for. And there's other weapons like that are not accounted for. And our borders are open, and we might see some of those weapons where they are. We might find out the hard way.
Yeah.
So just know that.
Oh yeah, I'm 100% convinced that there's a minimum of 10 of them already just waiting to go. And they're just waiting for some sort of issue that makes them look awful and shines a light on their crimes against humanity, and then we'll get a nice big distraction just like we did from last week. Things were supposed to happen, didn't happen, and then now we're talking about this instead of talking about that because that's the world we're in. That's the games that they're playing, and I'm not playing. I'm gonna do some other stuff today, and I'm not gonna concern myself with what they want me to be concerned with. I'm gonna be concerned myself with my family, my friends like you, and everybody out there in TV land, in the chat who joined us this afternoon. Wherever you guys are, whenever you see this, remember what's really important in your life. Whatever it is, I'm not going to tell you what it should be or shouldn't be. Focus on that, and let the small stuff just dissipate, evaporate, whatever you want to call it. Just focus on what's important. And for me, that's going to be enjoying you know, as much of my life, whatever, however much is left to it, my friends, my family, my dog, all of that's way more important than those people out there that, you know, don't give two, you know, craps about people like us.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Absolutely.
And I
Well,
think with
said.
that, we're going to call it an episode. And I know you've got to get going to do your things with your family and your obligations and stuff. I really appreciate getting to hang out with you and Mac. And who else was in the show today? Of course, James L., my good friend, who I will be bothering much uh, later on this afternoon. I got to do a couple of things first. James, expect to hear from me. Anybody else who comes in to the show later, I appreciate you guys having the wherewithal to think about the future and to care enough about your friends and family that you'd watch a show like this and maybe get, you know, some sparks of ideas to you know, help protect them and take care of them, because you know, in the long run, that's, you know, that's really what's important.
Sorry, guys, I can't see the text, so I mean, I can't see the chat text. I'm a boomer, so forgive me. I'm on my
Yeah,
phone.
it's hard to
Everybody out
do
there,
it on the phone.
I just wanted to say hi, and sorry if I couldn't see it. If you did say anything to me, I usually look later, but if you did say anything, you know, or I just wanted to say hi to you, and thanks for coming. Thanks for watching, and
We will be back next week with I'm not sure which topic. Grim and I are gonna talk about that over the week. And if you guys have a suggestion, I think we were talking about medical first aid supplies and things like that, but I need to get Bo on board with that. I know he's doing some other stuff right now. Bo, if you're game, I'd love to have you next week.
My son, my wife's a nurse, and my son's learning to be a paramedic. So if I could get them on at least the chat.
They're always welcome to the show, whether they
Yep.
want to be on camera or not. They're welcome to the show. Normally, you know, it's just the two of us. Sometimes Omen joins us, but we'll see. You know, Bo, I'm hoping that when you watch this later, you'll be able to at least join the chat next week, because I'm not sure if we're going to do medical first aid stuff or if we're going to talk more about your circle of family and friends, or if we're going to talk about food and rationing food and stuff like that. But enough of us, you know, being depressing. Let's go out there and get some gaming done, and you know, enjoy your family, enjoy your friends, enjoy the rest of your afternoon and week, and we will see you guys real soon. Anything you want to leave before we hit the road there? Any last words of wisdom?
I don't. I bought a bottle of wisdom and I dropped it. Sorry. It's broken. I don't know where it is. It's gone. And what I had in here, it left. So
no worries,
I just
my
want
friend.
to wish everybody a good night, and be careful, be safe, and be wise. Be wise to what's going on, and be wise to what your plans are, because you're going to need it. At one time or another in your life, you will need it, I would think. Things aren't getting better.
Well,
have a blessed night.
Exactly. Good night, everybody.